In this presentation, we're going to discuss the concept behind the All-IP Meeting Space from Atlona. So what is the All-IP Meeting Space? It's a way to simplify meeting room designs by bringing the power of large enterprise IP-based systems down to the individual meeting space, which allows us to reduce complexity, reduce integration time, reduce cost, and increase efficiencies. The products that we'll be talking about from Atlona that we use in the All-IP Meeting Space include the OmniStream family of products. That's both the Pro and the R-type encoders and decoders, the OmniStream audio devices, the OmniStream USB devices, velocity control software, and AMS management software. So before we get into the All-IP Meeting Space concept, it's important to recognize the challenges that exist in the presentation systems that we use and that we design with today. And those presentation systems consist of fixed configuration switches, blocking AV switcher architecture, in other words, a fixed number of inputs and outputs. So, for example, a limited number of AV sources, as we see depicted on the slide here. If a customer were to come back and ask for an upgrade to their system, maybe in the way of additional AV sources, being able to present from another location on the other end of the table, or maybe adding a podium into the presentation space. Could you add that for your customer, giving the architecture that you've designed for them? If you had additional inputs, it's possible you could add maybe one or two more inputs, but the chances are you're going to be very limited in the number of additional sources that you can add using a fixed architecture solution. The same thing's true with the number of displays. If a customer came back and was looking to upgrade the functionality of the room, maybe adding a second display for video conference solution, maybe adding a display out into the lobby to provide some feedback to potential customers or people coming in, or if you're in a house of worship or a classroom style setting, what happens when that facility becomes full and maybe you want to design in an overflow space where additional people could watch the content? If you don't have the ability to add more displays to the existing fixed architecture, then you can't grow and meet that new functionality need. So again, this is another limitation of fixed architecture systems that we typically design with today. Limited distances for AV distribution is also a concern. And when you think about the long-run technology we use today, HD-based-T, we're typically limited to 100 meters on 1080p resolution and about 40 meters on 4K. So that means generally you're designing for applications that are within that particular room or maybe very close by, and makes it difficult to share resources with other rooms or to present in other locations outside of the room that you're in. And any-to-any connectivity is another concern we need to look at. Customer requirements could be the ability to connect from any location to any display across the facility. And if you don't have that any-to-any type of connectivity, you may find your customer may find themselves purchasing additional equipment that they don't necessarily need if you were designing in an AV over IP solution where you could create an any-to-any type of connectivity solution. And voice and data is already on the IP network. Why not AV? You find that many customers out there have already invested pretty heavily into IP infrastructure. They're running voice and data on that, and they may bring up the question, why do I need to purchase additional infrastructure for AV? I would like to use the investment that we've already made. And you can do that in an AV over IP solution. All right, so we've seen some of the challenges regarding our fixed architecture solutions. What are some of the solutions now? Well, in an AV over IP or an all-IP meeting space where we're using AV over IP solutions, we find several advantages. One, the ability to design for any size room, because we have infinite scalability in an AV over IP solution. The second is to be able to design for any type of room, classroom, conference room, huddle space, house of worship. So really any size, any type now, and any number of sources. The number of sources on an AV over IP network has no limit. We can put as many as we want on there, provided we have enough ports on our network switch. And the same thing is true with number of displays. We can have any number of displays in an AV over IP solution. So down the road, if the customer's requirements change, it's very easy to offer them the ability to upgrade and to have their system grow with their needs. You've also got any-to-any connectivity, so we can take advantage of all of those different displays and sources and rooms that they could have within their facility or their entire campus. And you have no distance barrier when you go to AV over IP. We're no longer limited to those runs of 100 meters or 40 meters. Even up to 4K and HDR resolution, we can send without distance limitations, and it can be done over Cat5e cabling, which you'll likely find is pulled in the majority of the buildings over the past several years that are out there today. So no need to recable the infrastructure either. And finally, the All-IP Meeting Space enables efficiencies, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment as well. So the All-IP Meeting Space has several key pieces on it. We have the OmniStream encoders and the decoders on the network. You have the Omni 234 and the 311, which give us our USB over IP capabilities. You'll have the AMS software, which allows you to discover and manage all of those devices on the network. The Dante and AES67 enable transport for audio, streaming audio on the network, as well as our zoned audio distribution device, the 238. We even you may even find it necessary to provide an amplifier with the ability to pick up and decode those Dante and AES67 streams directly off the network. That's our gain series amplifier. And of course, control, the AV over IP solution would not be complete without having a simple to use control system, and we offer that in Velocity. So those are the key components. So now the question is an AV over IP solution actually affordable? We've been selling these fixed architecture systems for so long, everyone understands the price involved, the cost involved with those. But let's see how that stacks up using some real life examples with an AV over IP solution. For this first example, we're going to go with a fairly large room, able to handle over up to 12 people in a room with dual 4K displays, the ability to have audio and video conferencing in the room, wireless BYOD for presentation, 3 remote inputs, audio reinforcement, and a touch panel for control of the room. So let's see what this might look like using a typical fixed architecture solution. And in this example here, I'm going to show off the a Crestron solution. And as you can see here in the center is my switcher, my fixed switcher. This is a DMPS 350 with air media, so I've got physical inputs and Wi-Fi connectivity to this box as well. In the top left here, you can see I have 3 laptops added in for that's our requirement for the room, 3 connectivity points. We have video to HD-based converters to bring our signal into the presentation box, and we have USB converters to USB to IP converters to control some of those USB peripherals that will be on the network as well. And then down here on the other side of the switch, we have 2 HD-based receivers. These are 4K scaling receivers to go to the 2 displays. Beside that, the USB to IP devices to allow us to talk directly to those peripherals, in this case the camera, and the DSP with the omnidirectional mics. The DMPS 350 directly handles connectivity for a control panel and audio speakers. So this complete solution at retail pricing would be roughly $27,200. You can see I've itemized the price list there, so that you can see all the individual pieces in that. Now, let's compare this fixed architecture solution to an AV over IP solution from Atlona and get a feel for how the pricing stacks up. All right, so notice here in the center, I no longer have a fixed architecture switch. I don't have a switch at all, an AV switch at all. What I have is a network switch now with as many ports as I would need for my installation. So this is my core switching device here. And then up here in the upper left, here's my 3 laptops for my requirement for this room. And in this case, the first 2 laptops are being fed into a dual stream encoder. So this encoder can handle 2 sources. And just right of that, another dual stream encoder where I have the 3rd laptop and the Atlona SW510W, which is our BYOD and wireless presentation switch, all being fed into the network now. And I've got the Omni 311s, which give my presenter the ability to control the USB devices over the IP lines. Now down on the other side of the switch, one dual stream decoder here. It's a 4K scaling decoder to drive my 2 displays in the room. Beside that, my Omni 324s, which are the devices that allow me to talk to those USB peripherals, the camera, the DSP, and the mics. Here is a Velocity Gateway 250 small control processor for the room, along with a touch panel. And I've added in a Gain 60 with a pair of speakers from Atlona, Atlona being the Gain 60 device here, and a pair of speakers. So this has now all of the same functionality that we just saw in the Crestron solution at a considerably lower cost. And you can see here again, I've itemized this. This price list does include the cost for the network switch as well, with a retail price point of $19,540, over $7,000 less than the Crestron solution that we just looked at. So yes, the answer to the question is it is very affordable. Now this is a fairly large solution, so this holds true for a large meeting space, but how about a much smaller meeting space? Let's take a look at that solution as well. So now here is a small conference room for just a handful of people to get together, but still have dual 4K displays and similar requirements: wireless, BYOD, video hardware for conferencing, 2 remote AV inputs in this case, audio reinforcement for the room, and a control panel. So a nice little system here. And again, let's start with the Crestron solution. In the center here, I have a DMPS 250C with Air Media. So I have my wireless presentation into this as well. In the upper left corner here, you see the 2 laptop input requirement with the 2 HD-based transmitters to feed into that switch. I have a resident PC in the room and a touch panel for controlling the room. Down on the other side of the switch, a pair of speakers for output, a video codec with multiple feeds for 2-way interaction with my mics, my cameras, so when we can communicate with someone on the other end. And then on the output side, an HD-based T output going to a scaling receiver to the right display, and a second receiver and a scaling HD-based T receiver connected to the second 4K display. Total cost for this solution, again, I've itemized this out so you can see all of the pieces, $18,300 for this nice little solution from Crestron. And now let's take a look at the comparable solution from Atlona using the All-IP Meeting Space concept. Here again, in the center, notice I have eliminated the fixed architecture switch and installed a network switch. Up to the upper left here, there's my 2 laptops being fed into the system. Again, a dual stream encoder to feed into that network. The resident PC and the 510W from Atlona giving us our wired and wireless presentation capabilities for this application. Into a dual stream encoder onto the network. Then on the other side of the switch here, we have a Gateway 250, and then down here a touch panel, so we'll have control for the room. A dual stream decoder feeding my 2 4K displays. This is a scaling 4K decoder. And off of that, I have attached another Gain 60 amplifier and a pair of speakers. And then down here in the lower left, a set of encoders and decoders connecting to that video codec, giving me the 2-way connectivity with my video conferencing solution, and the omnidirectional mics and the camera. So again, all the same functionality that we just saw in the fixed architecture solution. And here, total price point itemized with the network switch pricing built in, $17,925, so almost $1,000 still less than the fixed architecture solution. So again, the answer is yes. It's very affordable to do an all-IP solution, whether it's a large conference room or a small conference solution. So, and these are just a couple of concepts. There's lots of ways to mix this around and meet any kind, again, of room type that you need, like we discussed earlier in the solution section. And don't forget, after this solution is installed, you now have complete flexibility within the system. If a customer were to come back and say, hey, I would like to add another display to the room or outside the room, or add on an overflow room, or add 1 or 2 more spots for presenters to attach, you can simply do that. We add additional encoders or decoders or USB devices, and the All-IP Meeting Space is infinitely scalable throughout the life of this application. So a lot of advantages when you're looking at the All-IP Meeting Space. And now going back to that model we saw earlier, the final column, I said we'd get back to that. How does the All-IP Meeting Space enable efficiencies? So here's another model to look at. Similar setup to what we just saw, with encoders and decoders being used to allow connectivity and displays in the room. Network switch is at my core, so I've got that expanded flexibility. And I'm using some USB devices to connect to peripherals in the room. I've got a gateway touch panel in here for my velocity control, an amplifier to break out audio. All right, now this is kind of a typical meeting space inside of a building. Chances are you won't install just one of these rooms. You might install 2, 5, 25, maybe there are 30 classrooms. When you start to install more than one room, you can really start to take advantages of those efficiencies using the All-IP Meeting Space, and here's how. Notice now I've added a central rack of equipment unique to this building. Now I've got one AMS server located in the rack, and this one AMS server now can be used to discover and manage the equipment in all of my rooms throughout this building. So I don't need an AMS server for every single one of those rooms. I need one for the network. Same thing with my control processor. In this case, like we've seen in other examples, the Velocity Gateway 250, which handles up to 250 devices. That could be several rooms. If you had 10 devices in a room, you could have 25 rooms operating off that one control processor. That's just up to 250 devices. We offer solutions up to 5,000 devices. So you have a lot of control flexibility with the Velocity system, but you can centrally locate a processor, and again, you get the efficiency of using one processor across these rooms so that your customer doesn't have to reinvest in the processor for every single room. Encoders and decoders are located in this rack too, because now I can share and route resources across my building or my campus, and I'm not limited to having those resources only be able to be used in just that room. Below that, you see now a stack of video codecs as well. If your customer has 10 rooms, for example, they may not need a video conference codec for every room, although they may want video conferencing capability in each room. But chances are, in 10 rooms, all 10 video conferencing codecs will not be in use at the exact same time. So this is an efficiency or an opportunity to gain efficiencies here. I could maybe just purchase 5 video conferencing codecs, locate those in a centralized rack, and then they're available to all 10 rooms for whoever needs them. And perhaps through use of a room scheduling software, you would build in a solution to book a room and book a video conferencing codec to go with that room for that time that you have booked it for. And then digital signal processors you see in this rack too, another area to gain some efficiencies. You're going to want audio reinforcement in each of these rooms, but again, this product can be a shared resource on the network. So we can locate these DSPs in a central location, and because the Atlona products support AES-67 and Dante, you can very easily ingest that audio signal, route it through a Dante-enabled DSP, for example, and feed it back into the room for an audio reinforcement solution, and that can be a shared resource on the network. So, nice way to create efficiencies for your clients here. So, quick recap of the All-IP Meeting Space. We know we can have any number of local or remote sources, any number of displays, any-to-any connectivity, and any room functionality. Works on gigabit infrastructure, all regular standard PoE-based devices, power over Ethernet. All the Atlona devices are PoE from that network switch. It's Cat5e friendly, affordable, and provides additional efficiencies. Also, if you think about the components needed to create any kind of room we want, there's only a handful of them: encoders, decoders, USB, audio. You see them on the slide here. This is your inventory. So it's real easy to manage this. Now, if we go back to a fixed architecture style of management, think about all the devices you would have to keep in stock to build any kind of solution for your customer. You would need at minimum, what do we have here? 4, 8, 11 different presentation switchers, and then another close to a dozen different devices that can be used to create different types of applications for your customer versus just having a handful of AV over IP solutions with infinite flexibility at the end. So a lot of great advantages to the All-IP meeting space that you can take advantage of. So to learn a little bit more about the All-IP meeting space, visit us online at atlona.com and check out the All-IP meeting space and the great OmniStream products that go along with the All-IP meeting space. My email is here on the screen. Feel free to reach out to our inside sales teams in the North, South America, and Latin America at tss@atlona.com, or outside of the Americas at presales@atlona.com. And the phone numbers are there for the inside support teams as well.